Welcome to Let's Accelerate. My name is Sara and I'm from Bosch Management Consulting. Today I'm going to talk with Eckhard Ortwein. He's the CEO and founder of Lincase. Welcome.
Hey Sarah, welcome. Thank you for having me.
Eckhard, do you mind just to make a brief introduction about yourself?
Sure. Well, I'm a commercial engineer by education, so I know a little bit about everything, but nothing for real. That's what I was saying. Started my career in also in consulting. Was lucky enough to spend a year in Palo Alto, where we took the German blue chips and showed them how the startup world was working. And then I founded two startups. One was a mobile payment startup that was basically 15 years too early, and was a long ride. It was a 10-year ride, and we sold the company finally to Sybase SAP. And the other one was an Israeli startup in the mobile authentication space. That was only 5 years too early because that was cloud-based, but that was sold to Ping Identity in 5 years ago. And since then, I'm doing lots of M&A projects, and I founded Lincase as a startup, really focusing on metrics, because I learned through my experience from being in a startup, being an investor, being in M&A projects, that metrics are a key point, and that's where I am now.
Okay, so it seems that you are a real entrepreneur, but always ahead of time. And
Yeah.
why do you say, and for us, this is something we always preach at Bosch Innovation Consulting, why metrics really matter, and why it's so important to communicate these metrics with the top management, especially on big corporations?
Well, first of all, I think take it the other way around. Look at projects that go wrong. Why do projects go wrong? And mainly they go wrong. Lots of reasons are because the metrics or the numbers are not what the numbers were supposed to be. And this is where it's really important to set the right expectations with metrics. But at the same time, it's also that you are not running after something which is not achievable. I think its metrics are an early proof point. For example, the simple equation: is the customer lifetime value significantly higher than the cost of customer acquisition? Everyone understands that you should make more money with a customer over his lifetime than to spend on acquiring him. Everyone understands it, but it's not really integrated in every business. And often we find situations where people or projects are on the road for 2 years or 3 years, and they've never done this analysis, and you do it, and you find out, something is wrong, on that simple equation.
Yeah, it seems super basic, but not, sometimes the top management, they ask already EBIT in the first, second, and third year that should be billions of dollars or euros immediately, and sometimes this simple equation, as you were mentioning, is completely forgotten. And how would the top management be convinced that these metrics for startup corporations are different, should be different from the core business?
Well, I think it's important that startups have a life cycle, right? And at every stage of the company, at a very early stage, and then later stage or seed stage, later stage, you have a different focus. And in the beginning, the focus is really about proving something. Can you get to traction? Yeah, is there? Do you have a product that, and do you find customers that are happy to pay you for that product? So that is the early thing, and then you have to move up and say, okay, now you have traction, but how can you grow this? Yeah, can you get to a scale? And then when you are at scale, then worthwhile really asking the questions about EBITDA and profitability, and how much money do you need going on, and grow it further. But every stage of the startup needs a different focus on metrics. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that top management has to understand.
Yeah.
Take into account.
Yeah, and you were talking about traction. What kind of traction metrics would you then recommend a startup to focus on?
Yeah, Traction early, well, there are different business models, and obviously different business models require a bit of different focus on traction methods, but most business models are direct business models, right? In direct business models, you can measure your traction by the number of customers that you can acquire. And that's the key, because it's the number of paying customers that will drive your business. And then how do you get to those paying customers, right? Then you have to prove that you can get to a certain number of paying customers at a certain level of cost, right? Because you first attract leads to your website, and then the conversion becomes important. How many of these leads can you convert into paying customers? How long does it take? And what is the cost of attracting leads to your website? And then how many do you convert? And that basically makes your customer acquisition cost. And then the number of customers they pay you money over lifetime. That makes your customer lifetime value. Yeah, and I think that's the simple thing. How do you attract customers? How do you convert customers into? How do you convert leads into paying customers? And how do you grow your paying customers? Those are the simple three questions you have to answer.
And this will be like the traction in the market. But sometimes many startups in corporation, they fail because they might lack traction inside of the organization. How would you recommend to check the traction in the organization itself?
Good question. Probably there's not one answer, because all organizations are different and they follow different projects. But I think what I've often seen is, you can be successful outside the organization, but you don't find even internal customers in the organization. You're not, people don't take you seriously, right? I think there it's a lot about communication, buy-in that you should secure, and proof points, POCs within the organization. This is how you can, I think this is how you have to demonstrate your capabilities.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's not an easy answer.
It's true. Yeah, what we have seen also on our Bosch Accelerator program is that having this evidence-based approach where you collect metrics, and with these metrics, then you have a stronger way to communicate the evolution of your business model within your own organization, and have better chances to also succeed internally. So yeah, maybe this is also a thought that I'm just having now, to having this internal traction inside the organization to see how serious is the company really about this startup to make it happen. Yeah, and how would you solve this, or what do you recommend your teams that you were working on to solve these chicken and egg issue? So would you first test all this traction, the funnel, how many customers you can convert? Or would you first guess what will be then your conversion rate, and then test? And how would you make your teams true to the metrics, and trying to avoid these vanity metrics?
So I think what we've lately launched also is a traction model, a bit like the lean canvas approach, but with also focus on cost and not only on customers. So I think you have to set where do you want to be? What is your success criteria in 3 years from now? Yeah, right. And then you have to break it down into steps. How fast do you start from zero? Right, like when do you have your first customer? When do you have your first proof point? I think that's the first proof point. And then like, okay, our success criteria is having 100 paying customers. Maybe in 3 years from now, we have our first customer after 3 months. So how fast can we grow? What does that mean? And then trying to break it down. What does it mean having these number of customers? What could by potential conversion rate be? So build the hypothesis. And then after 3 months, for the next 9 months, try to prove that you can get on this growth path. Yeah, and obviously always be realistic. is this achievable or is this not achievable? So I think it's 3 months to prove your product, 9 months to say, okay, we've now had a year, right? What did we achieve, and is it realistic to achieve our success criteria in 2 years from now or not? So have those milestones, and then if you're successful after a year, and you see that initial traction, and you see that your customer lifetime value is higher, potentially higher than your customer acquisition cost, then it might even be worthwhile, or then you must spend more money on customer acquisition and get onto this growth path. But I think you can really take this phased approach. Yeah, you don't.
So you're saying that 1 year will be the normal time that you will give to a team to check the traction and not keep learning. Because this is also a question: till when would we give a team the chance to keep investigating and checking the traction of their own metrics? Or when should we stop? Because some teams are having good metrics in many of the points, and then some of them might not be enough yet, but there will be always a justification. And I can talk about my own project. I had a project in 2017, and then I was doing incubation in 2018 and 19. And I was actually doing that, checking the metrics, and my customer acquisition cost was still high. And in my opinion was because we had to create a sales team from scratch, and this was in Kenya. Hire people, teaching them how to do the things, and this took a while. And all the other metrics were going better, this one as well, but I needed more time to recruit more people and so on. And at the end, the project didn't succeed because we said, okay, we don't do more B2C, we want to do B2B. But still, for me as an entrepreneur back then, and I only had this metric, which is super important, the customer acquisition cost, but I was seeing a good evolution, but not as fast as I was expecting to. When can an entrepreneur be convinced that it's enough? Or when should the entrepreneur still keep fighting, especially in a difficult market?
No, I think when you see that this customer lifetime is potentially higher than customer acquisition cost, right? I mean, then I think you can continue. Yeah, then you should continue. And maybe even spend more money to accelerate the growth. But if you see it's getting hard and the acceptance is not right in the market, I think then really after 1 year, after 1.5 years, you can say there is a real point to say, okay, this is enough. But obviously it depends also from the business, right? Some businesses take 12 to 24 months to develop a product. And there might be a justification for that. So hard to tell, but I think 12 to 18 months into the market really tells if you can be successful or not.
And that's also a question, because inside big corporations, so when you are a startup up by yourself, that you have the freedom to do wherever you want, create your own process and not being integrated in an organization that's already existing, sometimes you can be, or most of the times you can be much faster. But when you're trying to do that corporate innovation and you have to adapt to the internal processes, then your metrics can come much slower than at the normal speed. And that's why I'm asking if this time frame would still fit when you are talking about corporate innovations.
It's a good point. I have an example. Like, of course, when you are startup independent, you have your funding, you can do your website without the limitations of corporate branding, corporate policies. Then you can be much faster. I had an example where there was a carve out, but the companies or the startup still had to do the website. long corporate policies, and just the development of the website took ages, right? And of course, it didn't look as nice as the startup of another website, and it probably did cost 3 or 4 times the money. That's an issue. Of course, that's an issue, right? And I think you should. How to take that into account? Yeah, you should always flag that. Yeah, you should flag, hey, it's costing us 3 times more than if we would do it on the free market. We should take that into account, and it's delaying us by this and this. But you can, but still, these metrics are still there, right? The cost of customer acquisition is the cost of customer acquisition, and the cost of building the website doesn't really impact that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you have this lean case where you help teams to bring these metrics into a light in a more easy way to read and to communicate. Can you tell some examples of success stories from your lean case being applied?
Yeah, sure. So I think we just launched a traction model, so that is really, you can answer in 30 minutes. You can really say, what are my success criteria? Where do I want to be? You can enter you can select the business model. You can input your assumptions, and then you can see, like, what does it mean to have so many customers in 3 years in terms of number of customers, obviously, but also in terms of money you have to spend, which revenue will you create, all these things. It's very easy to do, yeah. And then you have a first proof point, and then you will ask questions. So, what if my conversion rate changes over time? What if my churn goes down over time, which is normal? And this is a situation where you can then build. You would probably then build your business plan, a typical Excel model. But this is what Lean Case can do for you. And in Lean Case, basically in 2 hours, you can build a very professional business plan with all the assumptions, and you can export it to PowerPoint, but you can even use the dashboards that we have with the P&L statements and all the dashboards. And I think, and you can do scenario analysis in there as well. Successes is really like this project I talked about is a carve out in a large German corporate. They use Lean Case basically to convince their management, and also to convince their management about SaaS metrics, right? In corporations, subscription metrics, SaaS metrics, recurring revenues, even talking about customer lifetime value, cost of customer acquisition, is not the normal metric. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So there needs to be a lot of education as well. And we have this in the product, but then at the end of the day, the product also provides a normal profit and loss statement that a good CFO would love to see, and it tells you how much money you need, when you become profitable, and all these things. So based on the Lean Case, that carve out got their go and got a $2 million or €2 million funding. So that's one of the examples. But we do this with startups. We help them basically to get to funding faster.
Okay, so it's mainly startups, not corporate startups that you.
Well, no, it's both. It's both. It's really both. Okay. Yeah.
Is it too different? So the way the questions or the way they use it?
No, I think the question, the approach is really the same. We also do in the corporate world. We are working with accelerators in the corporate world, and we provide trainings on metrics. We do one-on-ones with the projects in there. It can be a corporate accelerator, it can be normal accelerator. It's always the same approach. Yeah, and then you do one-on-ones, and then if their business model fits, and mostly it's subscription-based, transaction-based, e-commerce-based businesses, then we can build a Lean Case. And some of them can do it many of them can do it on their own. Some need help, and we can also provide that help.
Okay, understood. So let's move to our last part of the Vodcast. I will start 3 sentences, and you finish. So this sentence completion exercise that you don't know. Let's see. And we can also talk about it. So the first one is, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, okay. The first one is, without traction metrics, a team will
start struggle. Will start to struggle after 6 months.
struggle because, okay, this is not the sentence completion, but now why will they struggle?
Why will they struggle? No, I think it's always important to have to set goals, to set objectives that you want to achieve, right? And what are you going against if you don't have like an initial goal? It's not a you can always revise a goal, and you can always say, well, we have an objective. Let's try to achieve this objective. If you don't, but if you don't achieve it, it's not the end of the world, right? Mm-hmm. Can be open about it, but we should always have objectives to pursue.
Yeah, they can be also more transparent, right? By having the traction and trying to not fall too much in love with their own ideas and still be able to change. Okay, second one. The one metric that really matters for all projects is
the number of customers and the number of paying customers.
Okay, I agree. 3, corporate leaders should understand that metrics for innovation projects are
different from the projects, from the metrics of typical corporate projects, like the net present values, something like that.
Yeah, you still see a lot of still asking the old ones.
We still see a lot of people asking the old questions, and then they do their net present value. And if the project doesn't work, they calculate net present value at a terminal value, and that will always deliver results. But it's really not the right thing to do for startup type projects.
True. Eckhard, is there anything else that I forgot to ask or talk about?
No, I think we're good, Sarah. Yes. I really enjoyed the talk. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much to you for your time, and this was our Let's Accelerate. See you next time.